Welcome to the Death Talk podcast. The vision for this podcast is to break the culture of silence surrounding death and dying. I'm your host, Lisa Murray. Today, I would like to welcome Shanice McLeish, and she is the owner of an Atlanta-based business called Grieving It. And her mission is to support those who are grieving the loss of a loved one. She also has a children's book coming out, Grief on the Playground, September 1st. I'm very excited about that. And I just want to welcome you, Shanice, to the show.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me. And hello, welcome everyone.
And so I am excited to hear about everything you're doing. You'll probably be the first person that I've talked to that is writing a children's book specifically to address grief. And I love that. And that really stood out to me. So can you tell me a little bit about, first, I usually ask everybody what in your life as a child, and I know you're going to talk about the loss of your father, but before your father passed, what was the climate of death in your family? Did you lose anybody before him? Did you talk openly, or did your parents talk openly about death? Had you ever seen anything? Oh, okay, go ahead.
So growing up, so I lost my dad, as you mentioned, at a young age. I was 8 years old. And I love to tie this into my personal story because it's very true to me. I come from a West Indian household. We are Hispanic and West Indian, so there's a lot of cultural differences when it comes to surrounding death. I unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to speak of such feelings growing up as a little kid before I experienced such a profound death in my household, which was my father. We didn't really have conversations involving people dying. I experienced a lot of people dying in my life, such as grandparents, just family, friends of that nature when I was younger. So I knew what funerals were. My parents took us to funerals to celebrate the lives of other people who passed. But for me at 8 years old, death didn't really come knocking until my dad died. I didn't really understand the concept of losing someone close to me until I felt that with my parent.
Oh gosh, my brother passed and my nephew was 9.
Oh, wow.
And so we tried to figure out how it affected him, and so I'm really interested to hear. Okay, so let's just get into what happened. Do you mind if you want? We're just launching into the deep end here.
With people that talk about death so much, it's so normal for us now.
I know.
And I love it. My mission is to normalize the conversation, one conversation at a time, normalize grief. And it's easy for me to go from 0 to 100 in this conversation because it's our heart. It's what bonds us together.
Yeah. And it's so much part of who we are now. Like it's not like we have to dig deep into some part of ourselves to talk about it. It's like so much part of our, daily existence, and our, for me, I feel like part of me is with them.
Absolutely.
And so I'm with wherever they are. So I talk from that place all the time. And sometimes I have to remember, like, not everybody is there. I'm like, okay, wait. So, but I feel it with you. So this is good.
Thank you, Lisa. So yeah, I can dig deep into my dad's death. So I would say your nephew and I are kind of alike. So I was 8 years old. Your nephew was 9. My sister, she was 10 years old. So celebrating my aunt's birthday, she was having an adults only party. All of the kids were not invited. And my father and my mother were actually going to her birthday party that evening. Our babysitter fell through for my sister and I remember my mom had to stay back to wait on one of our cousins to come. And my dad went ahead of her, and they were going to meet up at the party. So leaving in that evening, early morning, we still do not have a time of death to say, was it the day before? Was it the day after? August 14th or August 15th, since it happened in the morning hours. But he was driving home from the party and I want to say this correctly. In Florida, so we grew up in Miami, Florida. There are lakes all over the place, and then there's barricades that stop the lake. So his truck actually crashed into the barricade, crashed over the barricade, and impounded into the lake. And as
Oh,
he was
gosh.
struggling to get out of the vehicle, he unfortunately passed away
Oh, gosh.
by drowning, for other people that are listening to the podcast. So in those moments, it was very hard. I remember waking up the next morning. My dad wasn't back in a Caribbean household. You clean every weekend like clockwork. You don't go anywhere outside of the house until your home is cleaned.
That's interesting.
And I remember my sister and I were waking up that morning. My mom was already doing laundry that morning, and I remember her calling all of my aunts and all of my uncles saying, "Where is he? He didn't make it home. This and that." So it was kind of not a big deal to my sister and I because we were just kids. We didn't know what was happening. It was just a regular weekday morning, Sunday morning for us. And my mom packed us up in the car and took us to our grandmother's hair salon in Florida and dropped us off and left. We knew that she was looking for our dads, but we didn't really understand what was happening. Well, I'm going to speak for myself. I didn't really understand what was happening at that time. Within the next couple minutes later, I remember my cousin who was watching us the night before was with us at the hair salon. She was probably in her 20s at this time. My sister 8, or I'm myself 8, my sister 10, and she screamed out loud while she was on the phone with someone. I'm guessing my mom. "Mackie's dead." And my father, we called him Mackie as his pet name since he was a junior to my grandfather. And the entire hair salon kind of just stopped.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone kind of stopped in their tracks. Imagine 6 or 7 hairstylists with clients and customers. And my dad had a great relationship with everyone in that hair salon. He knew them like as soon because he brought his girls there. It was his mother-in-law's place, connection and family. So it was a moment where everybody's crying. My sister was having, I wouldn't say a panic attack, but just having those emotions that happen for kids when
Right.
filled with anger. I would say that moment for her was filled with anger. The moment for me was filled with really confused, looking stuck, like observing everything that's happening in this place and hearing the words, "Mackie's dead," but not really
Mhm.
truly understanding, okay, you guys say he's dead, but where's my dad? It's kind of what was
Wow.
going through my head at that age.
Yeah.
I want to say maybe not even an hour later, my grandmother actually, she put us in the car and she drove to meet us with our mom, who was at the site of his crash, his accident.
Oh,
And when we
wow.
got there, we got out the car. I remember seeing TV stations and people's with camera, like individuals with cameras, prepping for the news run to cast. I saw my uncles, my aunts, and I seen my dad's truck hanging out of the water backwards. So as if they were, I wasn't sure if they already took his body out of the water, but
Oh
his
my
truck was
gosh.
still in the water.
Oh,
And that's a
oh my
traumatic, yeah,
gosh.
you say it, and I'm
Yes.
feeling it. That's such a traumatic thing to see. And
Right.
my mom quickly recognized the girls cannot be here. You have to. So my godfather, which was actually reluctantly our neighbor in our neighborhood at the time where we lived in Florida, he scooped us up and we went to his house until my mom came for us that same day. And what I love that it transforms with Grief on the Playground. The next day, I started my first day of 4th grade. And
Oh,
education is huge to everyone, especially in our
right.
family in the West Indian culture. Education, education, education. It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple years later, I said, "Man, I can't believe I went to school the next day." Mm.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and Grief on the Playground actually the setting takes place at a school, and it resembles the what I learned and what I wish teachers and educators did for me as a young girl who just lost her father.
Oh, wow. I love that. So it's almost like the book picks up from that moment.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's powerful.
Oh,
Gosh,
thank you.
I can't even imagine that moment of seeing the car. The visual parts of the physical part and the visual part was something that I surprised me that I got hung up on.
Uh-huh.
Um, a friend of mine was killed by a train and I couldn't get that took me a long time to get healed from, I guess, where it wasn't so traumatic. I can't
Absolutely.
imagine being that young, and then also it being my father and just seeing the truck and being in the place. I feel like that would, oh my gosh, I had such a physical reaction when you said that because I could feel myself standing there almost like, wow. So,
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that because of course we're going to be triggered when with you with the train. That's a triggering moment. That's a very powerful moment. And the same thing happened for me. My and in all honesty, excuse me, the same thing happened for my family. My
yeah.
aunt at the time, her and my father drove the same vehicle. They had a truck, a Range Rover truck, and the day after, I want to say the day after he died, she traded that truck in for a car.
Oh,
And
wow.
every time going forward that I saw his car, it triggered me. Like I would
Yeah.
automatically bust out in tears.
Mm,
And it took me years to overcome that feeling, years to where now I proudly say that every time I see that vehicle on the road, it gives me peace. It
mhm.
I joke when I say this and I smile when I say this, but I believe I tell myself it's my dad telling me that he's right there with me on the road, that he's
Right.
protecting me. And it's his way of being funny and dropping that car everywhere that I go and say, yeah, I'm still here.
Yep. Little hellos here and there. Yeah, I love that.
Thank
Okay, so
you.
after that happened and you're 8, what was happening like in your family in terms of um my dog's having a nightmare. This is a crazy sound. Okay. What happened in terms of like what was the environment? I mean, it sounds like your family was very open about like, some people I've talked to is in my family too. There's a lot of like nobody talks about death, nothing.
Mhm.
There's no talking about the person. There's no, it's like really uncomfortable for people if you bring it up. And it's to me, that's so strange. I'm like, why would you not talk about the person? I know it's going to be hard, but how can you
Right.
not? So what was that like? Was there conversation about it amongst the adults around you, or what was the climate?
Absolutely. So it was kind of a mixed thing for me and my family. Um, a lot of change happened once my father passed away. My mom didn't really want to stay in our home anymore because it reminded her too much of my dad and his death, which I completely understand. So
Wow.
we moved in with our grandmother for maybe just, I want to say it was just a couple of months so that my mom could feel, like the support was there. She had the opportunity to do what she needs to do and to feel comfortable to move back into our home, which we did a few months later after my dad passed away.
Mm.
From there, we picked up and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm located now, less than a year later. So it was a lot of moving parts and a lot of change. And the only way that I really felt connected was through having those conversations with my mom, specifically with my family. And we come from a very big family. My father had, or he currently has, 7 siblings on
Oh,
my
wow.
on his mom and from his mother and his father, total of 8, 7
Wow.
other siblings. So we have a pretty huge family. On my mom's side, it's a complete same. They have a large body of number of siblings. But my dad, his his life stayed alive through his siblings, through his sisters and his brothers. We always spoke of them. My home unit, we always would celebrate his life on his birthday, on his anniversary. We would always go somewhere nice and expensive to eat because we knew that he would do that for us. So that was kind of our way to doing it for him. Every year we'd choose a restaurant and really just spend time with each other and eat
That's
some good
nice.
food in his honor.
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
really
really
nice.
have, thank you. I didn't really have much conversation about how his death affected me though, because those are those type of conversations that really didn't take place in my household. And I noticed growing up, I lacked from not having those conversations. I had a lot of things internal that I just didn't really know how to work out. I wasn't sure how my grief was evolving at that time. And to be honest, my grief was not evolving. So from
Mm,
age 8 all the way to 17, I graduated high school at age 17. We would have those twice a year celebrations, but it was just an overarching celebration. We're remembering your father, but it hasn't been a ongoing conversation that I miss your dad. I miss my dad and all those more intimate details.
now, was it that nobody brought it up or questioned you, or was it also, or maybe completely, um, you not knowing how to access it? Like maybe someone did ask you, but you didn't know. Maybe they asked it in a question that was more advanced or something than where
Mhm.
you were at as a 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old, you know?
I think it
Do you
went
think?
both ways for me. I
Mm,
think it wasn't accessible to me. I didn't understand how to talk about it. But at the same time, I don't believe that I had the opportunity to talk about it.
mm,
And that could just be me being a kid, being in my shy ways. But I think because my sister and I are such high operating individuals, and that we, when you lose someone at such a young age, you have to mature very quickly. And
right,
we
yeah.
matured well. We did good in school. We had friends. Like we had a great childhood, which I'm very thankful for. And we had good grades. Like they really didn't have anything to worry about on the outside looking in.
Right,
So
right.
I'm thinking that could be one of those things. Like I don't have anything to worry about. They're fine, is how. But say that if we were acting out in a terrible way, I'm sure that would have been a number one conversation or something to tackle.
That's a really good point
Uh
because
huh.
you're right. Like if you, especially a child, because from the outside looking in, with like my nephew, it feels like if you dig in, you're going to almost create a problem. Like maybe we're going to freak him
Yes.
out or make him
Yes.
feel like there should be something he's feeling. And so you're always observing, and trying to figure out at what point, can you say something? Should you say something? And I can see if you and your sister were high achievers and you were doing great and you had friends, that would feel like that a little bit like, well, what are we going to bring up? They look fine.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's almost like, oh, why am I
I
so
know.
great?
I
You know?
know. And growing up through high school, I was a part of all of these clubs where we had to do all these volunteer hours. And it's just in my system and in my soul and in my blood to get out and serve people who need to be served in any way or any capacity. So as I transitioned to college at the age of 17, I was really looking for just somewhere that I could volunteer and somewhere that I can have the opportunity to give back. And I found a wonderful organization here in Atlanta that services families from, especially kids, specifically kids and their families, but from age 5 to 18, called Cate's Club. It's free for all families. If anybody out there needs it, this is the shameless plug. But I started volunteering at Cate's Club 17, 18 years old. And it changed my life in the most amazing way possible. It taught me how to grieve. And it showed me
Mm,
that at 17 years old, I did not grieve my father. I didn't
right.
know how to grieve my father. And here I
Mhm.
am, 17-year-old, working with 5 and 6-year-old kiddos talking about their death. And honestly, they taught me so much. Lisa, when
Can
I
you
tell you.
oh my gosh. Can you explain what Kate's Club is a little bit? Because I actually don't even know what it
Absolutely.
is. Yeah.
I would love to share more about it. So, Kids Club is a nonprofit organization based in Atlanta, Georgia. Look, I could be, listen, if anybody's out here, I am the official spokeswoman. Based out in Atlanta, Georgia. It was founded by a wonderful woman named Cate Atwood. She lost her mom to cancer when she was
Mm,
12 years old. And Cate really found it in herself that it was hard to find people or to find kids of her own age that were going through the same thing that we went through, losing a parent or losing a sibling. And they cater to families that have lost a parent, a sibling, or a immediate caregiver such as their grandparents or aunt and uncles that were their primary caregiver.
okay.
And it really is a place. It's not a place where we sit around the table and talk about dead people all the time. Although, us, we would love that.
Right.
It really is a place where you find community and you find other families, and more importantly, you find other kids that are at the same age of your child or
Wow.
someone that are really going through the same thing. So we have a concept at Kate's Club and we call it our clubhouse. So the clubhouse is really just where we have a lot of kids that are going through and grieving someone, their loved ones, and buddies and buddies, we call buddies volunteers. So we get trained, we have training sessions and we get certified to be able to be with the children. Background checks, all the good stuff, making sure everyone is safe.
Wow, that
And
sounds really cool. Oh my God.
absolutely, they have my I love this organization. When you find something and it's for you,
Yep,
this
yep.
is definitely it. So for Clubhouse, it's a full day, just like a work day for a parent or a caretaker. And they drop the kids off to our clubhouse, and they're really just matched with kids in their own age group. So we have 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9, 10s, 11, 12s, and then 13 and up. We split the teams up. It goes from 13 all the way to 17, 18.
Wow.
And it's just really an opportunity, a chance for each child to really come together. And we do a lot of activities. It's really based on activities to get everyone moving. We have paint therapy, any type of art therapy, music therapy, and it's people that come in that spend time and really lend their expertise to kids that we can do an activity, horticulture, anything that you can think of. I've personally done my own activity there. I have a background in sports and youth recreation, so I curated an activity for our teenagers where we went outside. They had to set up their own volleyball court with anything they found outside. They had to, and really just come together and focus on being there and taking an activity and switching it into how they're doing in their grief, connecting all
Wow.
of those dots of why mental health is important, why friendships are important, especially at their age, family relationships, anything that you can think of that feeds into grief. I'm sure that Kids Club has had passing through their organization. And they're amazing, so amazing. We take
And
kids.
if somebody listening would want more information on that, what is there a website or how would they?
Absolutely. So Kate's Club, they do have a website, and I'm going to make sure it's correct before I tell you, but it should be katesclub.org,
Okay.
KATESCLUB.org. And it's
Okay.
amazing. Everything that you will need, you can find on their website. They have amazing staff that are more than welcome, or more than, what is the word that I'm looking for? More than happy to help and assist families. And it's so crazy. I've been a buddy there since 2014, and we have grown tremendously. I remember one year we had over 200 new kids alone.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
absolutely. It's
And is it just in Atlanta or
so
in
we
Georgia?
are based in Georgia alone, but we do have feeder programs in like rural parts of Georgia so that we can really get the demographic. I'm speaking as if I'm a part. I am a part, so that the demographics can be reached everywhere. That they can have some type of programming. I'm unsure what the feeder programs look like currently through the coronavirus pandemic. I know that we're slowly and surely getting back to in-person um, programs at Kate's Club. So it
Right.
might be a slow startup, but we're definitely out there in the community.
So, okay, so going there made you realize you hadn't grieved. And so then
Absolutely.
in working with the kids, you started to grieve. Can you talk a little bit about what that process was like for you? I mean, did it bring up any darkness of like, did it make you feel afraid at all? Like, oh my gosh, were you overwhelmed at any times?
I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that it brought up any negative or darkness to where I was. I was always comfortable talking about my dad, but I didn't know how comfortable I wasn't talking about him. And children, they have no filter. They're going to say what they want to say. And it's literally a place where you can just be with them. And working with 5 and 6 year olds at this time, we had to take programs and really break it down, or activities, and break it down for them to understand, so that the way that you speak to a teenager is completely different the way that you speak to a 5 6 year old, especially when it's involving death.
Yeah.
There's different ways that you can say things, but I realized with working with them, I was talking more and more about my dad. I was sharing stories about my dad. I was, for the first time in my life, talking about my dad and being so intentional with talking about my dad. And working with them, I realized that they had more strength than I did at the age of 18. And I was fueled by their strength. Like I always wanted to go back because I knew that it would heal me a little bit more. It would heal me a little bit more to where I was doing it, making it work.
Yeah. Can you go inside of the it's a strange request, but
It's
I'm thinking
okay.
of somebody listening to this who's maybe stuck and they haven't started grieving it. And they know they haven't really fully grieved, but they don't know what even that is. Like, when you're in it, you can't see outside of it. And so, in what way did you know that you hadn't grieved? And what were the signs that you were starting to go, okay, now I'm grieving? What was that like from the inside?
Absolutely. I knew that I didn't fully grieve because I wasn't in touch with the feelings that I truly felt that my dad was no longer there. I never thought about it. It hit me over the years. I've graduated high school at this point, and I was in my first year of college. So I really only experienced a few: high school graduation, my senior prom. I've only really experienced a few really big moments in my life up until then. But I wasn't connected to really what it was like living life without my dad, and how the little 8 year old on the inside of me was not healed from that. Or the 8 year old on the inside of me, I never checked in with her to see how she was doing as a 17 year old. And the feelings on the inside of me, they honestly, in those moments with serving and volunteering with Kate's Club with those kids, they brought up emotions, and they brought up hearing someone else's story, especially a kid. I would cry so much in front of them because it's normal to cry, especially about
Right.
someone you love. But a 5 year old could be telling me a story about their mom or dad, and I am just boo hoo tearing. And
Mm,
it's perfectly normal. We really accept that and welcome that at Kate's Club, and not to hide it from the kids, because
right.
crying is normal. Missing someone
Yeah.
is normal.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I realized that it was time for me to do this. Like I to go full forth and really get into all of my feels and all of my emotions, when through the encouragement of people at Kate's Club. We would always have our briefing, and then at the end of the day, we would debrief what happened in these spaces that we were with the kids and how did the activities go and everything of that nature. And I could recall at this age years ago, I would always say, man, I started boohoo crying. And I would always say that. And they just touched me in a way today that I realized I'm not whole from my dad's death. And I think it really just truly starts with Lisa acknowledging that you are not where you want to be in your grief process, or you don't even know where you are. But that acknowledgement is it's a very important piece.
Right. And I can see if you're around other people that are expressing emotions about
Right.
something and you start to think about it and you're like, have I fully gone into that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can see that being a big mirror sort of to come up for you. Um,
Absolutely.
and also for me, I was like, well, when I was younger, I had a really like good view of death. I lost my grandfather and I felt really peaceful and spiritual about everything.
Hmm.
But it was losing my friend and then my brother right after that that really just totally traumatized me. And I was kind of also traumatized by my reaction because I
Hmm.
was so peaceful and spiritual about all these other deaths. And then it was like when these two died, it just chucked me into this trauma. And so people would tell me, make sure you feel all your emotions. I'm like, oh, trust me. I'm not even like, I couldn't hide it if I tried. And so I definitely like threw up all my emotions over, a couple years period of time. So
Hmm.
um that wasn't an issue for me with those deaths. So that's why I'm really genuinely curious of like, I want to know. I want to know what I don't have that thing in me, I don't think, that can just go about life like and just excel. I'm the type of person that I will fall apart all the way through. And I'm forced to have to look at stuff and in order to even take the next step, forward, to even like get back to working. Like I had stopped
Uh-huh.
working. Couldn't do anything. And so I'm looking at you like, okay, teach me your ways. So I'm learning from you. I'm really truly genuinely learning from you because I'm like, okay, because I mean, not that that was the right way and mine was the wrong way. It's just literally the opposite side of the universe from my experience. And
Absolutely.
I can totally see everything you're saying and the way you're describing it. And it doesn't sound like you avoided anything. It just sounded like the way the path laid out in front of you, it was never something that hindered you in any way for how you were. And then you go into this place, which obviously I feel like you were guided there, probably by your father, because that just sounds too perfect, Kate's
I'm
Club.
receiving it. I completely agree.
Right. And then now to be putting this book out there, I think it's so good because it had that book, like let's say you went back to school and then they had this book in your grade school, in your fourth grade, how would that have changed the trajectory of your grieving? And so
Absolutely.
I love that you're giving back and putting something back on that path that um that would have maybe helped you, because even though you were excelling in life, I think if you hadn't found Kate's Club, it would have, like, let me ask you, how do you think it would have affected you had you not started understanding that you hadn't grieved by the time you're about 17, 18? Let's say you're like, 35 and you're a mom. Like, how do you think it would have affected you if you had never grieved?
Lisa, I am on the same page with you because as you were speaking, I truly connected. What if Kate's Club did not exist in my world? How would that be? Because although they cater to kids, I found them as an adult.
Right.
I found them as an adult and I am stuck. But I truly believe in this moment, if Kate's Club was not in the journey for me, I don't know how strong I would be. I don't know how I wouldn't know to what caliber could I speak about my father without breaking down. And I know that my insides would be a mess. I know
Mhm.
that my feelings would feel so suppressed, and depression probably would have circled around me a couple of times because I would have never known how to talk about it. And no one
Right.
around me gave me the opportunity or the space to talk about my feelings. And Kate's Club did that for me.
And I also feel like if we don't, like when we lose somebody that we love so much, that there's such a strong love there. And that's a natural thing. You didn't choose to love. Yeah, I don't think we choose who we love. I think we just love, like, whoever it is, and
Right.
whatever the connection is just there. And the fact that, you had a good relationship with your father, it sounds like you did. Sounds like he was a great, great man.
The
And
best.
oh, I love that. But if that whole part of you was like undealt with, I feel like it would make that whole part of you in terms of how you interact with the world and intimacy and love and connection sort of off limits. So even though every other part of you would be out in the world succeeding and doing things, and you're kind and you're
Right.
loving and you're aware, there's this huge part of you that is just not connecting deeply because it's busy doing something else. It's busy, keeping
Absolutely.
the door shut or whatever it is.
Covering
Um,
up, it's busy hiding its true self or its true feelings.
yeah, exactly. And that's why I think it's so important that we talk about this, and I know you understand, and I'm just saying this for listeners, like, yes, you could be high achieving. Yes, everything in your life could be okay. Like, you don't fall apart like I did or
Right.
other people do, but it doesn't mean that it's not negatively affecting you to not deal with
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. And something that truly helped me out, and I hope that this can be used as an encouragement to someone out there, that whenever it was really time for me to sit down and focus through therapy, I learned that it was important for me to go back to my 8-year old self and figure out how she was doing. How did
Mm.
she feel? And what did she need from my current self in that moment right now?
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it has been tremendous. And I use that tactic for every age that I had something big happen to me, traumatic happen to me, something that I needed to process, something that I needed to go through. I had to go back and connect with that age of myself, that version of my past self, to see what that version needed in order to feel healed, that I can move forward in life.
Mm. And it's also like it's not even like a one-time thing. Like you just said, it's not like you go back, you deal with it, and then you're like, okay, good. I think that's the perception. Because I think when I was younger, before all this stuff happened to me, I would have thought it meant you go back with a therapist, you reconnect with that part of yourself, you listen to that 8-year-old child, and then, okay, I heard it, I've released it, and now I'm back to the age I'm at and I'm moving forward. And now I see it more like, because I know that grieving is a lifelong thing. It's like that because we love them and we never are going to
Absolutely.
stop loving them. And so, of course, you keep the connection open. And it's more like you've created a tunnel in yourself that opens that other part of yourself up to now. And you always, for the rest of your life, you're going to stay in touch with that part of yourself because
Absolutely.
it's going to experience different losses throughout your life, or different positive things too, in terms of how it sees loss and how it sees your father in different light, in yourself and how you see death and your own mortality and everything. So it's like to keep that channel open now. I think that's the key.
Thank you for that. I am receiving that and I will be sure to, for
Well,
sure.
I think for me, I think a lot of people wanted me to get over this, wanted me to get past it because it was so messy and crazy. And so I'll tell you from the other side of this whole thing, from the messy side, from the life falling apart side. Like my business, I couldn't run my business. I moved, I had to get out of everywhere. And it was like, I just really shut down for like a couple of years. And for me,
Yeah.
I didn't even want to live. And so it was really hard for me because nobody could really help me because you can't help someone want to live. You just have to let them go through it. And I'm sure it's very hard to be around someone like that. And for me, if I sensed that someone felt like there was an end to this, or that somehow one day I'd just be over all this or whatever, it actually affected me really negatively as well. Cause I thought, these were two, like, that game Jenga. I always say this,
Yes.
but I felt like, Derek and Michael were I lost my brother and my friend in a short period of time. And they were kind of like my two main Jenga pieces. So to
Oh,
have them both come out at that within a year, uh, was really both unexpected, both completely shocking deaths and
right.
unrelated to each other. And it really made me fall apart. And I didn't realize that they were that to me. I didn't realize that that's how it would affect me. But it did. And I feel like the only thing that's helped me go forward is believing that, is keeping that connection open, is holding the hand of that part of myself that did fall apart, and
Right.
walking through life with that, instead of leaving it behind, hoping, and then I can go out in the world and become successful again. That's not good for me. Like, I have to like hold her hand and be like, okay, let's go do this messy life. Let's just live it. Let's give, let's love. And maybe one day everything will make sense, but let's just keep going. I always say hashtag keep going, because that's what you have to do. You just have to keep going, even
I
when you don't
love.
understand. So, okay. All right. So let's move past this. Not leaving it behind. We're grabbing its hand and bringing it with us.
Yeah.
And then how did you start grieving it? And how did that when did it start to become something that you wanted to do as like your business?
I realized that I really wanted to have a voice for children that really were going through a loss of their parent or their sibling, and had adults talking for them that really didn't really understand what it was like to lose someone so close to you at a fundamental age. And I remember someone at a church that I was going to, someone passed away and they had young kids. And it was so disheartening for me. I spent a lot of time in the children's ministry of my church teaching kids there. And it hurt my heart when I would overhear adults talking about the death of the person that passed, and correlating it back to the kids and saying all these things that really blew my mind, blew my mind. And I was like, man, like I really wish that I could meet those kids where they are and step up for them so the adults can hear what they want to say, can hear how they really feel, and not have feelings for them.
Can you give an example of some of the things that blew your mind?
Absolutely. If I can recall correctly, it was a lot of years ago. I want to say 2015 or so. I was overhearing people just saying, "Oh, they're gonna be fine." Where are they gonna be fine? They're fine. They don't need anything. They're going to be kids. They're resilient. They're going to bounce back. Things of
Mm,
that nature. That might be
right.
true. They may be fine. They will bounce back. But there is such a foundational loss in their life that they need the opportunity and they need the space to visit that loss.
Right.
And I did share, and I had the great opportunity to share Case Club with this family, and I know that they utilize them, which makes me happy.
Good. Yeah.
It was very hard to hear people say these things. And I'm still a kid now, still younger amongst the people who are saying these. So, and growing up, I learned so much about respect. You respect people that are older than you.
Mm-hmm.
So who am I to say anything? And then I realized that really fueled my heart at that time. That really fueled my heart posture to say, I really want to have a voice out there, because I know that how important it is for kids to be able to feel freely and to speak freely about how they feel. And that really turned into Grieving It. Our mission is currently to normalize grief through a
Mm-hmm.
single conversation. And thankfully, I wouldn't say thankfully, we all went through the coronavirus pandemic, was traumatic for me and my own. I lost several family members, and not only
Oh.
myself, everybody around the world were experiencing the same things that we were experiencing. And grief really came to a forefront this past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I thought of Grieving It early 2019, and I created a Instagram page for it. I didn't get a business for it as of yet because I wasn't really sure what I wanted out of it. And as the pandemic went on, or even before the pandemic, I was really working on Grieving It and really trying to figure out what I wanted my audience to see, what I wanted to provide to those who are grieving. And the pandemic hit. I said, okay, it's really time to go full fledged. Like, let's do this thing. I really started doing it like hardcore full time during the pandemic. I got my business license, my trademarks, everything that I needed to feel official. And then I really just went out there and poured my heart into this. And it truly is a extension of my heart. It truly is an extension of who I am, because my heart posture, Lisa, is to just be there for someone in their own grief mess. If that is sitting with you on the floor, I say to my friends all the time, and I learned this, like, if you don't want to talk, that's fine. I'll just sit next to you in pure silence. We don't
I
have to
love
talk
that.
about it. But it's to me, it's just knowing that someone has your back, someone supports you, and not only supports you, supports your feelings.
Absolutely.
So that's really what Grieving It was birthed out of. I knew I was really focused and trying to go back and forth between the normalized grief part and grieving it. It really symbolizes to me, we grieve something. It could be a loss of a parent, a loss of a friend, a loss of a sibling, a loss of anything. But additionally, grief is more than a loss of someone. Grief can be a loss of you moving. You can lose friends. You can lose finances. You can grieve all of these different things in the world. And I wanted to recognize that we are all inclusive over here. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm just sitting here thinking about how polite you are and how well-spoken, and I just love your energy. You're very respectful. And I feel like I can see why this is a passion for you, because I think a lot of times when someone is respectful and quiet and like not pushy and like falling apart outwardly, that can be overlooked, that can be like, everything's fine over there, and I keep getting that from you, is like, I love that you're doing this, because a lot of people, like, they say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so the one that's loud or that's having problems always gets the attention. And the people that are like quiet, because I was actually very quiet when I was younger, and people don't check
Same.
in with you. They just think everything's fine because you're not having a problem outwardly. And I know we
Yes,
talked about this earlier, but I keep thinking about like how what you're doing is so important, because you're almost like an ambassador for the other quiet, respectful children out there that
yes,
don't know that it's okay that they're actually experiencing something too. They probably don't even know that they're experiencing anything. They're like, no,
absolutely.
I'm sad, but I'm fine, and it's like, you're like, okay, well then I'm going to sit right next to you. And you know what? I'm sure you've seen it, that they probably start to unfold and release things that they didn't even know that they had going on. So I'm so glad you're doing this.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Mhm.
I am so appreciative. I'm so appreciative. My heart is absolutely full. Absolutely full.
Yeah, it's good, because I'm telling you, being a quiet child, I know when you said the adults were like, oh, they'll be fine. For me, it was my parents divorced, and it was a very chaotic home when I was younger.
Mhm.
And I think people thought, because I was quiet and respectful and very respectful of like my teachers and adults, and like, I think nobody checked in with me. They just thought I was this nice, quiet, and I guess for me, my grief was my normal home life. There was like chaos, and started from like what I thought was a normal home to like not a normal home. But like nobody ever checked in with me, literally, not a teacher, nothing. But for me, the thing what that did happen was that my grades started to suffer. Because I couldn't concentrate around fifth grade. That's when I was like, I cannot think. And so it did start to outwardly show, but only in my grades. In every other way, you probably wouldn't know, that anything was going on with me, because I was quiet. And even if people asked
Right.
me, I still was quiet. I still was like, no, I'm fine. Like I didn't know how to access that.
Exactly.
So
Surely, when I tell you that we are cut from the same cloth, especially for me, I think I was really just more expected to be fine and be okay. And I guess I never thought of it this way. I didn't want to ruffle anyone's feathers when they say, "Are you fine? Are you okay?" And for me to say no, that's really out of the character, out of my 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old character.
Hmm. I also didn't even know how would I say that I'm not okay? The way that they ask it is as if I would know what it is that's wrong with me. And so I knew that I couldn't
Right.
say,
Right.
like, if they said, "Are you okay?" I knew I wasn't okay. And I also didn't really want to disrupt them, but I did want to be honest, but I didn't know how to put it into a package that an adult would then consume. Like I couldn't figure that out. So I would just say I'm fine because I knew that I couldn't figure it all out, you know? And so I was just like, I remember trying to talk to a teacher once, and I remember saying I would stay after school and help them clean or whatever. And
Hmm.
I could tell after a while, she was like, okay, you've been here every day, you know, and I wanted her to ask me, I wanted her to go,
No.
what's going
Yeah.
on with you? Are you okay? You know, but if you ask open-ended questions to children like that, they're usually not going to answer you with the truth.
Correct.
They're just not. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm just saying like they're not. And if you ask specific things like, what do you do when you go home normally? And I say, well, I just, you know, read or I play with my dogs. And then they say, well, is anyone home to play with you? Like ask
Right.
specific questions. I think that would help. I don't know.
No, it's absolutely, it is actually very, very helpful because just saying, "Are you okay?" Well, I'm alive and I'm breathing. I'm not like
Yeah.
in a child's mind that has experienced a death or a loss. I'm not dead. I
Right.
am okay. That is what they're thinking. But if you really get down to the nitty gritty, how does this make you feel? That's a
Mm,
different conversation.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like ask a specific question that a child or even an adult can then mull over and answer. But yeah, you're right. Are you okay? I don't want to like say no. And then they say, what can I do? I don't know. I'm, you know, 8. How am I
Right.
supposed to know? I don't even know. And you're like, okay, well, let me know when you know something. That's the same thing, you know, in my other interviews, when people say, you know, for adults, they'll say, like, after someone dies, like a husband or a child or something, they'll say, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Well, that's not going to happen because when you're grieving, you can't even think and you don't know what you
Yes.
need. And so there's Ashley Jones, who I interviewed before from Love Not Lost, and she discusses like all these great ideas of like an email with a checklist of like ways people can help. It's like a service that she's setting up, and I have to check back with her and see if she's done it yet. But like, I love that idea because it's like that's what you need. You need like a checklist, like help me mow the lawn, you know, bring me a meal once a week, or like be very specific because when you're feeling like that, you can't think. And so I'm thinking, even as a child, not only maybe it's different because you're not in the depths of the understanding what you've lost grief type of thing, but you're a kid. How do you even know what's affecting you and how it's affecting you? There's no way you could even know that.
For sure. Absolutely. Because all you want to think about are video games, food, candy, all the things that are not good.
Right. Yeah, you're just like, I just have to go to school right now and I have friends and
Right.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so then tell me now about when the book came about.
So, my favorite story to tell. I remember I took a trip with my close family, to my close friends growing up from middle school to high school. And we went to Denver, Colorado. We did a skiing trip in December. It was so great. And I said to them in Denver, we were in our Airbnb, and I said, "You know what, guys? There was about six of us that were there. I said, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna be an author. I'm gonna do this." And I came home from that trip. I apparently talked myself into it December of 2019 in Denver. And I came home from that trip. The book was finished in January of 2020. It was finished on computer,
Right.
pencil and paper. It was finished, and I remember those moments that I was prepping. I wrote so many children's stories. Like I just took my laptop and I said, "I'm just gonna write. I'm just gonna write." I want to say I have about 4 or 5 things in the queue, but when I wrote "Grief on the Playground," it was one that really resonated with me. It stuck to me, and I said, "This is it."
Yeah.
I received confirmation that this was it. And I said, you know what? This is it.
Yeah.
And the story really evolves. We were talking about how you shared with me, and thank you for sharing your beautiful stories. You shared with me that you kind of wish your teacher asked you how you were doing or what was going on at that time. And for me, I really, really wished the same thing. And I recognize the important role that educators play in children's lives because they spend most of their time with kids, honestly,
Right. Yeah.
8 hours a day, kids. And so the story really takes off that our main character, Ava, she is coming to the end of her summer vacation, and her father passes away from cancer. Although my dad passed away from a sudden car accident, cancer is really something all kids will know about.
Hmm.
Even if their loved one didn't pass away with cancer, they know that cancer. When you hear the word cancer, they know it's a sickness. People sometimes die from it, people recover from it. So I just really wanted something that was not known to everyone. So Ava's father passed away from cancer, and the next week, Ava went into a new school year. And at the school year, Lisa, I tell you that I truly believe in the power of Me Too. That is
Hmm.
one of my favorite sayings, especially when I'm talking to a kid. At at Cate's Club, it's truly one of my favorite things to say. When I'm talking to a kid and they say, "Hey, my dad died," my favorite thing is, "Whoa, me too!" And you say it in such a tone that makes them feel like they're not alone. That wow, somebody else you know
Mm.
died as well.
It's
So
powerful.
I really wanted to bring that Me Too movement to this storybook. Going into a new semester or a new school grade automatically. There's a part in the story where Ava overhears her mom telling the teacher that her dad just died, and prepping that dreadful conversations I know parents have with teachers every single day.
Right.
And on the playground when Ava's sitting alone and everybody else is having fun, Miss Johnson really walks over to Ava and asks for her permission, which is so important to ask kids for their permissions to be with them, to sit with them, and really just tells Ava that, hey, me too. I heard that your dad died, but I want you to know that my dad died too. And from this, it really just opens up another conversation where Ava has the opportunity to ask Miss Johnson what happens next. And Miss Johnson really sits there, and Miss Johnson's our secondary character, which is the teacher. And she sits there and tells Ava, well, you're about to go on a journey, and it's the grief journey. And Ava doesn't really understand or know what grief is. So she asks Miss Johnson what grief is, and Miss Johnson really just takes her by the hands. And there's a word that I would really love to use, and escorts her onto the grief roller coaster. So our
Mm.
storybook is really, it starts, my illustrator, she's so amazing. She's based here in Atlanta, Maria. It starts at a elementary school. It morphs into going into an adventure park. So where there's roller coasters, because who doesn't know that grief, you just, it's a roller coaster in our lives. And I really wanted to take that image of a roller coaster that kids can understand. Kids love roller coasters. Why?
Mm.
I have no idea. I hate them. I get so scared.
Yeah.
I cannot breathe, but I realize everybody can't breathe. And I'm just like, no, I really can't breathe. And the ups and downs and the loops and the twists and the turns and not really knowing what's coming next. That is what grief is to its
Yeah.
absolute core. So Miss Johnson takes Ava by the hand and really shows her life on the grief roller coaster. So there's pictures in the story where you see Ava having her high points, and then Ava having her low points, Ava having times where she's really missing her dad and wearing his clothes, and just all these sweet things. And every experience that she's having, Miss Johnson is right there next to her. And the story, it really closes out on an encouraging note. And I truly want educators to really pull from this book and know that kids' feelings, like kids have really, really big feelings, especially when it comes to someone that dies. Those feelings, they're not looked at the same. They're not weighed or they're not valued the same. And there's a favorite part in the story where Miss Johnson is with Ava, and after they come back to reality from this adventure park, Miss Johnson takes Ava by the hands and says, "If you have any questions, I'm here to listen to you, or if you just want to talk." And she reminds Ava that she matters and her feelings are important. And the best thing to me is that she encourages Ava to talk to her about her father sometime, and really
That's
keeping that
important.
promise to Ava that if you ever want to talk about your dad that passed away, I'm here to hear about it because I would love to hear more about him. And that to me builds a connection and builds a relationship that you are forever bonded with someone, because now you and I, Lisa, we're forever bonded because we know that our griefs are connected.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And from that, Grief on the Playground has been such a blessing to me in creating this book. When I tell you, I never liked reading growing up, and I am now just finding a not full joy, just a little joy and picking up a book. And I'm getting to the place I told myself, if I'm going to be an author, I need to love to read. I need to love words. I need to love it just like I love math. And I'm pushing myself every day. And this book has blessed me. And I am just, it's my heart. I just want to bless it to one person. But I know me impacting one, I'm going to get a million and a million and a million and another million and another million.
Mm,
But my goal is just for that one person who needs this, has it in their hands, and has the opportunity to be blessed by it as much as it blessed me.
I love that.
Thank
I can
you.
even see this being a series. Like that's the thing. When I look at the image on your website,
Oh,
and I
thank
think
you.
I love Maria's illustrations. I just love that. It's really
She's
good. It's very
amazing.
colorful. I know it's got the perfect vibe. It's very gentle looking and soft, but strong
Absolutely.
and loving. And I don't know. I like the energy of it. It matches with what your story is, what the story is that's coming through you. And I really like that.
Thank you,
Um,
Lisa.
but yeah, it's like I totally see this as could be like a series. I think it's brilliant. I love the name of it, Grief on the Playground, I think is immediately tells you what it is. Like it's grief for children on a playground. You don't know if it's
Absolutely.
going to be a roller coaster or not, but it's grief on a playground. I love that. And also I want to tell you that probably because of losing your dad at such a young age, probably is why you don't like roller coasters, because it's like that whole testing death and like, oh, we almost, we're flying in the air and we're doing all this
Yes.
stuff. If you've already experienced something that was real and that was taken away from you, you don't need to even go near anything like that because
Yeah.
you already know that feeling, you know it, and
I like
it's
my
not a
feet
fun
planted on
thing.
the ground. Yes.
Yeah, right. And it's like, no, thank you. Go ahead and do that. But no. Yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. And so when do you expect Grief on the Playground to come out?
Absolutely. So our launch date right now is September 1st, 2021. I have my launch team and we are pulling together. We are making this thing big. I'm trying to get an army behind this because if one person could connect it with one person in their community and their network, imagine if 1,000 people do that. That has over
Mm,
1,000, 2,000 impressions. And I know that it's going to touch a kid where they need to be. It's going to meet someone where they are. And that is the most important thing to me. So September 1st, it's going to be available everywhere books are sold. We are formally on Amazon. We're going to be at Barnes and Noble. You can get them at your local libraries. If your librarians can order it through their systems, it's going to be everywhere.
oh, wonderful. So like if you work with a church with kids or a school or, daycares or anybody, actually, anybody that's lost anybody, that there's children involved, it's a great book to get. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I'm definitely going to get a copy just to have it on hand for the inner child in me who
Oh,
lost
thank
things.
you so much, Lisa.
Yeah.
Your support means everything.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful what you're doing, and I feel it. It definitely I can it's a heart thing for sure because it comes across that way. And so I'm really glad you're doing this and you're giving a voice to so many to something that I don't think has been I haven't seen it. I'm sure maybe some versions of it exist somewhere, but your specific take on it is totally unique and it's so necessary and so needed. So I'm so glad you followed that feeling and that you acted on it in Colorado and you went back home and you wrote it. And I love that because I think this has the potential of healing so many people and also educating teachers and parents as well of what
Absolutely.
kids need. So thank you for
Absolutely.
doing it.
Thank you, Lisa. I truly appreciate you and your kind words, and I'm receiving all of the energies that you're putting out because this is it. I'm really excited. I feel like I'm holding on to something so powerful, and I'm so ready to release it into the world.
Oh, good. All right. Well, then I want to talk to you again like after it's out. So we'll
Oh
reconnect. And I
yes.
want to hear like an update of like where it's gone in the world and what's next for you. Cause I know this is just the beginning. This is just cracking something open for you.
I love it. We will get it on the books.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I
Thank
wish
you.
you the biggest luck with the book. And like I said, we'll talk to you again in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your holiday.
If you would like to share your death story, you can send your death story as a written email, or you can send an audio file of yourself explaining your death story to deathtalkcafe@gmail.com. For more information, you can visit our website at deathtalkpodcast.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Death Talk Podcast and on Twitter, Death Talk Pod. Thank you for listening.